Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Dr. Alyssa Marshall. Yeah, this is great. So it's about that time where, this year's CAPID is not over, and still a lot of schools, or some schools, will be sending out interview invitations, and some schools' deadline hasn't passed and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the bulk of the interview invitations have gone out. And by now, the people that are left are kind of like, well, is this going to happen for me or not? And it's kind of a very challenging place to be at. And then there are, of course, people that are planning on applying for the first time next year as well. And I thought we would put together a workshop to walk you through CAPID, show you what it looks like, and bring your attention to some points within CAPID so that you can spend your time wisely from here till, obviously, the earlier you apply, the better. But from now until the next time you apply next year, I wanted you to spend your time wisely. And to do that, thinking about CAPID in a strategic way is very helpful. Now, before I go forward, if you guys could be so kind to tell me that you guys can hear me or see me, that would be very helpful for me. And Zeva asked, did I miss a lot? No, we just started literally. So I guess that means you can hear me. So that's fantastic. Just another note is the fact that there is a time delay between when I talk and then when it gets like delivered to you. So your chat is going to reach me a little bit later. So that's number one. And number two is I did prepare slides. And the thing is, when I start presenting the slides, it takes over the full screen. Therefore, I can't really see the chat box. Now, I want to tell you that because I'm not the most technically savvy person. If I was, I probably would figure out a way to present and like look at the chat room at the same time. I really don't know how to do that. I have to just present and then stop the screen sharing from my part, and then I'll be jumping into the chat room. So you guys feel free to chat amongst yourselves, and I will go back to answer as many questions as I can. As long as time permits, but I will be doing so from the top down and from relevant ones. So I do say this because every workshop, a lot of irrelevant questions come in, and if we do have the time to touch up on those, I definitely will do that. But things like, oh, hey, what's UCLA gonna ask for this year? Things like that, you know what I mean? Like, which doesn't really have anything to do with strategizing for CAPID for next year. So those irrelevant questions will take the back seats. I just do want to make that clear. Okay, so yay, I'm excited. I am going to now start sharing my screen the best I can. I don't know if you guys were here last time. I tried to like share my screen. I had prepared slides on a different platform at the time, and every time I tried to share my slide, it crashed my whole computer, pretty much, and that wasn't very good. So deep breath. Here we go. Okay. I think we're good. Yeah. Okay. So strategizing for CAPID, this is what I want to talk to you about today. Just very quick background information. You guys don't know us or me. I'm Dr. Alyssa Marshall from International Dentist Central. For the past few years, we've been working with dentists from all around the world, get into advanced denting programs within the United States. And CAPID is a relatively new thing. I say it's relatively new, but I guess by now it's not super new. It's been like how old? 4, 5, 6 years? And it has come a long way. In the beginning, it was honestly really disastrous. And I know even now it doesn't make everybody happy, but honestly, it has made so much improvements within its own system that, yeah, that I'm honestly happy to see. But, you know, it's not perfect still. But anyway, what is CAPID and why are they doing it? It's a centralized application service for foreign-trained dental graduates who wish to practice dentistry in the US or Canada. So if you're going to go and try to do an advanced denting program, this is likely the portal you're going to be using to apply to schools. This is not for residencies or fellowships or anything else. This is strictly for advanced denting programs. And why did they do this? They did this to simplify, because each program is ran separately, and it was challenging applying. And even with CAPID, it is still very, very challenging. But I do think, because I have applied before CAPID, and I've applied both with and without CAPID. And honestly, I think it has become a little bit better, even though it kind of brought the costs up a lot for application, because now there are 2 types of costs, you know, money you have to send to each school, and then money you have to send to CAPID, so that they would relay your thing on to the schools that you do select. So it has become a little bit more expensive, and that's a bummer. But in terms of, if you put financials aside, it has become a little bit easier to navigate. So that is what CAPID is. And if you're not sure what it is, or like if you've never logged in, or you know, if you haven't applied yet or whatever, you probably saw the name a lot, CAAPID, and it's like, what is that? But just Google it, go to their site, and just make an account and just log in and take a look. The big picture, it makes it look so simple. Across the very top of CAPID's website, there is a big picture, like the steps, the biggest steps. Number 1, fill out the application. Number 2, designate the programs to apply to within CAPID. Number 3, submit, which actually means pay. And then number 4 is like check status of like what is happening. Now, this is, I think, overly simplified, but I mean, yeah, it is the bigger picture. But within this fill out the application falls so many different things and thing. So let's zoom into that one. When you go in to fill out your applications, there are 4 sections to it. This is like the overview of things, I guess, one more time. And CAPID is essentially your CV. For the most part, it's very parallel to what your CV would be. But it has some more questions that, let's say, CAPID threw in there, they want you to answer. And it has categories and things like that for you to choose from. It also has word limitations, formatting limitations, and all those kind of stuff. So you can't do, let's say, like the fancy things that you might have wanted to do on your CV if you were going to print it out and send it to them. But some schools still ask for printout CV, so you could do it in those times. But anyway, 4 sections for the CAPID: personal information, academic history, supporting information, and program materials. It doesn't look like a very big deal, huh? And it starts out pretty simple. Section 1, personal information. This is like super straightforward. Name, when's your birthday, are you male or female, what's your address, what's your phone, what country you're a citizen of, what's your race and ethnicity, background information, do you have any criminal history, like while you're practicing in the home country, did you lose your license by any chance, or anything was put against your dental license because of any whatever happened. And there is a place where they ask, have you applied to US dental schools in the past? And if so, where? Like you have to lay out every single school you applied to. And also there's an area where it asks for relatives in dentistry. Now, And I think there are like 4 or 5 like spaces you can use, and you put the relative's name, your the relationship to you, is it an uncle, is it a mother, things like that in there. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at the chat room later. Yeah, I already lost it. Anyway, it is straightforward. If you don't have relatives in dentistry, don't worry about it. I didn't. A lot of people don't. That is totally fine. Past applications, people sometimes wonder or worry whether they need to put it in or is it going to count against them. If you applied, absolutely put it in. Please do not lie in your application. Everything is centralized through CAPID. In the event that they do find out, your entire application can become nothing. Like everything will get forfeited. So don't do that. It is so not worth it. Would it be great if you submit your application great the first time and it all finishes up the first time? For sure. But is it the end of the world if you're applying 2 or 3 times? No, not really. And look, like if you are where you're at, you can only move forward from here, right? And don't you need to get into dental school anyway? So you're gonna have to go through this. So don't worry about it. Just put in the information, where you applied to and which year and things like that, and just move on. Don't give it too much thought. Section 1, it's the simplest of all sections. Then comes section 2, academic history. This also starts out pretty simple. It's not too bad. There are 4 sections to it: colleges attended, standardized tests you took, continuing education courses you took, and advanced dental education programs you attended. It is important to note that not everybody's going to have everybody's going to have these first 2. You graduated from dental school, so you did go to college. Obviously, you had to pass the Part 1 boards and TOEFL at the least to even apply, so you do have some standardized tests that you took. But continuing education and advanced dental education programs, those 2 are not like, oh, you can't, it's not mandatory, right? But these are the 4 sections that you'll have to fill in. So colleges attended, way too straightforward. I'm not even gonna explain this to you, but you just start like typing the school name that you graduated from. Usually they have it in their database. Now, if you are from a country or like a school that is not listed there, you can still add it. It's kind of like telling them like, look, my school isn't here. This is where I went to. It's not a big deal. Honestly, actually, that's how I had to do mine. Mine wasn't there. So yeah, depending on where you come from, which school you're from, it may or may not be there. Not a big deal. Don't give it too much thought. Just give the school, the address, what year, what degree did you graduate with. Now the second area, the second section of section 2, academic history, is standardized tests. That is NBDE Part 1 and 2 and TOEFL. There are sections that you can update after submission, and by submission, we're not talking about like working on it, like being saved. We're talking, oh yes, I'm done. Please send this application of mine to a few of these schools. After you, let's say, submit your application in that way, there are sections within CAPID you can update later, and there are some sections where you cannot update later. Standardized tests is only for NBDE Part 1, 2, and TOEFL. Sometimes, there are applicants who already did a master's in the US, and to do a master's, they had to take the GRE, so they have a GRE score. You can't add that score here. Same with the DAT. It really only has the option to choose from the boards and TOEFL. But if you are, let's say, planning to take Part 2 on a later date, then you can mark the NBDE Part 2 as planning to take and give a tentative date. Now, it's okay if your actual test date did not completely coincide with your planning to take date. But if you do kind of do that, it's kind of like a space holder for yourself. And if you put in that space holder, you can come back and after you take the test, and if you do pass it, you can put that information in CAPID. Same with TOEFL. If you, let's say right now have a 90 and you're planning on retaking it, but you're still just putting together your application right now, you can put in your 90, but then add another TOEFL score and be like planning to take. And later you can change that planning to take to taken and put in that score. So it's important that you know what can be added, edited, and what not. Continuing education courses. I thought it was really funny that CAPID said that schools do not want to see more than 10 of these in the past 5 years. And I mean, this is totally something that happened. It wasn't always like this, but obviously, I mean, just think about it. This happened because there were some applicants that just wanted continuing C course after C course after CE course, and tried to fill in, I don't know, lines and lines and lines of things through it. And they just got tired of seeing that. You know, it's kind of like trying to play the system, and they didn't like it. So now they're giving you a number, which is actually a good thing. I actually appreciate this instead of just leaving it blank, because then hopefully that will send that message to that applicant that maybe was planning on taking 30 continuing education courses, and tell them like, look, that's not going to help you at all, so don't do it. But yeah, so no more than 10 in the past 5 years. You don't have to shoot for 10 at all. It's just kind of their upper limit of what they want to see. This is another section where you can add more to this section after submission, which is great, right? If you apply and submit it in April and you go to a CE course in June, you can come back and add. You cannot delete or edit the parts that have already been submitted though, so that's something to be wary of. So like when you submit something, make sure that it's kind of complete on its own. Also for CE courses, for each course you do take, you need to upload a copy of the certificate that you got after completing the course. So don't forget to do that. There's a place to upload that. So gather all of your past material together before you get ready to start filling this out. And then the last part of the academic history is the advanced dental education programs place. This is where you put in your dental residencies, externships, internships, fellowships, certificate programs, etc., stuff like that. So if you did residency back in your home country, if you did any externships here in the US, you would do that. You would not want to put in your mandatory internship that you had to go through, because that was not an advanced dental education program you did. That was a mandatory thing you had to go through and able to graduate, putting it in there, but it's not going to help you at all. And I think it causes kind of like an annoyance factor. If, you know, because what that is it's trying to dress up a mandatory internship program as something bigger than it really was. Schools have been evaluating and looking over candidates' applications for years, and it is no secret that they have a huge pile on top of their desk. And whenever something comes across and it looks like they are trying to balloon up what they've done into something bigger, or trying to hard to, let's say, present, yeah, like the internship you did as something like big that you went and did, those don't go by very well. And if the person is annoyed, I wouldn't be too surprised if they kind of just glance over the rest of your CV instead of reading it fully. So I wouldn't do that. This is another section that you can update the entry, but you cannot add anymore. So that's what's different about the CE, and I think this is very unique to the academic histories part, if I'm not mistaken, because, so this is basically like, also have to say like, oh, did you finish this? residency, or are you still in it? And if you were in it in March while you're submitting this application, but by May you're done, then you can come back into CAPID and update the entry as completed, right? And that is great. Okay, so now I'm gonna go actually to the chat room. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a minute and let me go to the chat room. I have no idea what happened in the chat room. Let me scroll back up to the top and see if any pressing questions need to be answered. Again, I'll really only be looking through the questions that are very relevant to this presentation right now, because I think this is a huge topic, not talked about enough, and I want to make sure that we are not deviating away from it until we went through all of the questions, of course. Will not having research experience affect my CAPID application when everyone else has it, asks Arsha. And this is such a huge question that so many people have. First of all, I don't think everyone else has it. So I didn't have any of it when I applied, and I know other people that haven't. I also know a student that graduated last year, I think, and she graduated with a top honor. She was the only one in the international program to graduate with top honors, and she got into dental school, obviously, and she didn't have any research experience either. Now, big part to talk about, because there's a few things that go into it. Research. It's good to have it, yes. It is absolutely good to have it. If you can have it, have it. None of these things, none of these experiences are like lacking it. None of it is going to be like, oh, this is the end, you have no chance. It's not gonna be like that, because they're looking at the complete application. They're not just being like, research, yes, no, yes pile, no pile. And they're not just moving forward with the yes pile, you know what I mean? So you need to look at your whole application before you can say anything. But then there's also that issue, I'm gonna call it an issue, of a lot of people while in school do research, and that's not real research. And by like real research, I mean you're in the lab, you're sequencing protein, or you're looking through data to actually find implications between, I don't know, orthodontic treatment that was rendered for class 2 cases at different ages for different severities, to see the relapse. Things like that's like published worthy research. Looking through how many times a day your classmates brush their teeth or things like that is not real research. I know a lot of dental schools want to give their students kind of like a research-esque experience, and therefore put together those kind of projects where you get to choose a project topic to do it. Now, I think those projects are great in and of itself, but if you list them under research, that's not going to be so great. So it's just a side note, but Arsha, like, no, it's not just research that they're looking at. You otherwise always think, oh, Dr. Alyssa didn't have any research experience, but do make sure that the rest of your application is solid. There's a question about recommendation letters. We haven't gotten to that section yet. Ooh. Okay, where do we add the CE credits for a volunteering opportunity in the US? Is it MPH? Okay, let's come back to the chat room questions afterwards. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff in here, and I think it'll be easiest if I go through the thing first. So section 2, we just finished talking about section 2, which is academic history, and now we're going to talk about section 3. Now, this is where most likely you're going to be spending the most of your time while you're putting together the application itself. And how do I start presenting again? Here, hold on. There. Okay, so that was section 2. Section 3, it's so innocently named supporting information. So much packed under here. Under supporting information, there are, what is it, 6 sections: evaluations, experiences, achievements, licenses, other relevant information, and personal statement. This all falls under this innocent looking supporting information section. Starting here, there's a lot more writing you need to do yourself. So there is like a text box where you have like a 600 character limit to put in a description of responsibilities or things like that. Before we even talk about any of this, I need to touch up on this. Formatting. Through your application, your formatting must be consistent. End of story. And this takes a lot of reading, proofreading, checking again. And honestly, it is extremely draining, energy consuming, and time consuming. But there's absolutely no shortcut to this. Even if you worked with somebody else, this is your application. You have to make sure at the end of it, it is all done. I've seen stuff sometimes where, you know how like when you type really fast, if you wanted to type AE, let's say, it would reverse the order and you ended up typing EA, things like that. I see things like this. I see inconsistent title formatting. So if somebody's gonna say, volunteer at American Red Cross, they would capitalize volunteer like the VAB, but not capitalize the C. So, you know, the title capitalization throughout was not consistent. I see all kinds of things. Make sure your title capitalization is through and through, all the way throughout, and your body. So are you going to use periods or not? I recommend not using them and keeping them bullet points. So no periods, okay? You need to either like use like the dash or the bullet, but just use one. Don't go back and forth. Don't, in some entries, just like hit enter and not use any bullet points if it needs it. Like that kind of inconsistencies, like I see them in good applicants too. And I know when I say it, it sounds so obvious, but things just slip. Make sure that you have this like written down somewhere big. Formatting, both in the title and the body, must be consistent. It just looks like it's so much work that goes into CAPID, but when you print it out and the formatting is inconsistent, it really looks like that person didn't care when they put it in. So it's so worth your extra time, even if it means submitting 1 day later. Totally cool. No typos. This is big. I mean, it's like a duh, but seriously, it happens all the time. One more thing around the text. More text is not always better, and we'll talk about that when we talk more about your experiences area. But anyway, section 3, the first thing you put in, or the first area for it, is recommendation letters or evaluations. They're the same thing. You can no longer mail in paper letters to CAPID. Actually, this has been a few years, but this is still like a question that comes up. Like, oh, like how do I get a letter? Like, do you need like a physical letter? The answer is no. You're gonna go to CAPID and designate the person that you want to have send in a letter for you. You're gonna put in their name, their email address, and a little note for them. And that sends them an email saying, hey, Alyssa requested that you send in a recommendation letter for her, kind of thing. That's how it's done. And then the recommender will upload their their letter online through their portal. And honestly, this is not a small deal for the recommender. The recommender needs to go in. They need to create a full profile. It's not like, oh, okay, let me just submit my letter. It's not like that. They have to give away, it's you know, those long sign-up forms, like to create an account. you need your entire address and your email and your phone number and all those kind of things, just to get to the point where they can actually submit their recommendation letter for you. Now, CAPID officially recommends that the evaluators use official letterhead and that the letter contains an original signature of the evaluator. This is important, and this is a little annoying, honestly, for the evaluator, again, because what's likely are they gonna do? They're gonna type up a letter on their computer. Then they have to print it out on a piece of paper that bears the official letterhead, or maybe their document itself already bears it, but then they have to sign it, and they have to take a picture of it or scan it or something like that. In terms of file formats they accept, it's like a doc, DOC, DOCX, or a PDF, or a RTF, or a TXT. Now, this doesn't really make any sense because a TXT file can't really have an original signature. It's like a text-only file. So I do not know why they accepted. I guess it's just like we recommend that it has an original signature, but I would definitely tell the evaluators ahead of time that all that you want them to, like, would they be able to give you a strong recommendation? You don't want any recommendation letter. And I mean, this is not today's topic, so I'll just glance over it really quick, but ask them first, like, can you write me a strong letter? If the answer is yes, then let them know, like, hey, this is for CAPID, you're gonna get a electronic thing, which American people are used to that. That's how things are done for undergrad and for grad school application all the way throughout anyway. So they're used to it. And then just let them know, like, oh, it would be great if it could bear your official letterhead of the organization you're at, and it also has your original signature. That would be fantastic. Then while you request that, you actually also, there is an option for you to either waive your right to view that letter or not. And you absolutely want to always waive your right to view it. It's not really an option, because if you don't waive your right to view it, it's kind of like, well, the evaluator knows it, and then the people accepting the application knows it too. And it's like human interaction. Like the fear is that the letter will not be as objective because you would be reading it and you have a personal relationship with the evaluator. So always choose waive your right, and you cannot mail in paper letters to CAPID. Yeah, you can't. So that's the deal with evaluations. Then comes experiences, and this is like the big part, right? Are you ready for this? It's another thing that you can add more after submission. Categories. These are the designated categories that CAPID has for you. So when you put in an experience, you have to choose. You have to choose. There's no other. You have to choose amongst these. Now, taking a look at this is an interesting thing because it shows you kind of in their minds what categories or how they're categorizing applicants' experiences. They're looking at dental, employment, non-dental healthcare, research, teaching, extracurricular activities, and voluntary activities. Now, there are things that, so like, okay, you want to be as well-rounded as possible for the most average candidates. Try to be balanced. So looking at this, if you're like, okay, I have one dental experience and I have one teaching experience, maybe then you try to go and get some volunteer activity. And if you can get some research experience, that is good. Maybe you can't have an employment history because you have a visa here and you already left your home country, then leave it. But if you can, then I'm like, all right, maybe I should like try holding an official job so that I have something under the employment. So like for the average candidate, or for the most candidates, for most applicants, try to be balanced with it. Now, I say for most applicants because there are some applicants which have a kind of a very strong tendency towards, let's say, one area, right? Like, and what's coming to my mind right now is a very research-oriented candidate, for instance. If you are you have a very academic background, you're planning and continuing down that academic route, then honestly, I'm not going to say that it's a very big deal that you're lacking an extracurricular activity field, right? It's like, it's okay. But like, if you are like most applicants, trying to be balanced in those categories is going to be helpful. Inside, while you each field, or when you put in, let's say, whatever experience you had, you can, it asks for information like, where was this? Who was your supervisor? What's the address of the place? What's the phone number? What was the title of your supervisor? What's your supervisor's email address? And those fields are all gonna say it's optional. It is not optional. You need to fill every one of those fields and do not leave a blank space. Like, why would you leave a blank space, okay? And again, typo and all those kind of things are very, very important. And then it all even asks like, oh, how many hours a week were you there? And how many weeks did you do it for? And things like that. All of that. Then there is that text box that comes in. And this is where you enter your description, 600 character limit, okay? Thing is, this is like a big question. Should you try and use up your character limit? And this is why I said it really depends. And this is why I said in terms of text, more is not always better. It really depends on what your application looks like. So it's going to automatically sort the sequence, the activities or experiences by most recent first. You don't get to choose that or change that at all. It's not your choice, okay? When you enter the dates, and let's say if you choose like, oh, this is ongoing, if it's a position you're still holding, then you would choose ongoing. It automatically floats to the top. If you have two ongoing ones, the one that you started more recently automatically floats to the top. Which actually makes it convenient in a sense that you don't have to worry about like which sequence in which you're inputting the data. You can input the data of your experiences in any sequence you want to, and it will still automatically sort it. However, it does bring the question up, have a great research experience and it's over. And after that was over, you held 7 different small positions, and some are still ongoing. Then, dental related, let's just hypothetically say that this is the case. If that is true, then you need to make sure that whoever's reading your application will do those 7 things that are not dental related while they may be rendering, I don't know, where's the dental stuff? And reach the research experience and have some interest enough to read that section, you know? So if your application looks something like that, then I would not use up nearly the character limit for the most recent things, because first of all, my objective is, and the strong points of my application is that research that I did that ended a year ago. I need to make sure that whoever's reading my application reads that research part. Okay. Now, because of scenarios like this, whether you should use your character limit really depends. This is not a straightforward like yes or no. There's no, if anybody ever tells you, oh, absolutely, you need to use every space that you can get to try and get as detailed as you can get in every description you put in, don't trust anything else they say. They mean well, but it's just not true. Okay, it's such a case-by-case basis. You have to look at your situation as unique, and it is unique. It's surprising how many people don't think that their situation is unique at all. It is always unique. Okay, so that was experiences. And then you have a whole area for achievements. Achievements is also categorized, and this is again another area where you can add more achievements after submissions. You have 3 categories: awards, presentations, and publications. These are what they want to see in the achievements section. They do not want to see, oh, I graduated from dental school in this year. That's not an achievement per se, at least not in this context. Right, I mean, depending on who would format the CV, they could have put it in there, but it's not there. So, but if you got an honor or award while you graduated, that would definitely go in there. Any award that you got during school or beyond, any presentations that you've given, I wouldn't put in like a small presentation I gave in front of the school, unless it was actually in a US setting, then I would put it in, but otherwise I wouldn't put it in there. And then publications where you published anywhere. This too has a 600 character limit. So use it wisely. And then comes licenses. Licenses there are two categories to these licenses, dental and other. And it is another area where you have to upload a copy. This is another area where I'm not too concerned about, like whether you have a dental assistant licensed or not. Honestly, I don't think that carries a ton of weight. Dental assistant doesn't necessarily contribute to being a better dental practitioner. If you're a registered dental hygienist, that changes a little bit because now you actually have more intimate, you know, like one-on-one time with the patient, and you're like treating the patient a little bit more, and other licenses. Anyway, so this is another place you have to upload a copy of your license of that thing that you have, just like the CE certificates, you must upload a copy. And then there's this random section called other relevant information. It literally just has a text box, and it says, provide other relevant experiences and or credentials. Most people do not need to use this section. Don't worry about it. Only use it if you actually have something to put there. Don't put repetitive information. Don't make the reader roll their eyes that, you know, you put in something there just to fill up space. CV is so not about just filling up space. You have to be very considerate to the reader. The reader that has to read a lot of these, okay? So yeah, for most people this doesn't apply, but some people it does, which is why this place is there. So use it if you need it, but again, it has a 600 character limit, which honestly, like if you actually needed that space, 600 characters can be pretty short because you have to start from the title or, you know, like the heading of what it was about and like why you're putting it in here and things like that. Okay, so the last part of the supporting information comes the all too famous personal statement. This is big. And again, there's just going to be a blank box staring at you with little gray letters on the bottom right-hand side saying 5,200 character limit. And if you start typing in it, it's going to tell you how many characters you have left and things like this. An important thing to note with a personal statement is that once you submitted it anywhere for that CAPID season, it's done. You do not get to change it at all to any capacity. And the fact that the same exact personal statement goes out to every school, so you cannot tailor to schools. Let's say, like, whether you're applying to Penn or UOP, you're going to send out the exact same personal statement. So you have to be careful how you're presenting yourself to it. Now, with that said, the 5,200 character limit is almost 2 pages, which should be more than sufficient for what you need. Now, here are my kind of recommendations with a personal statement, and this is definitely not a workshop where we're going to go in depth into it. It's going to take, we can talk about only personal statements for like hours, but definitely start writing. Do not start writing the personal statement inside CAPID. Copy paste the final and completed personal statement into CAPID. That's it, okay? So you need to start working elsewhere. Pay close attention to the red squiggly lines. Make sure that red squiggly line capacity is turned on so that it alerts you of any typos or any formatting errors that it can see. Definitely recommend that you work with somebody on your personal statement in general. And there should be no wasted lines in it. Everything inside your personal statement must have a purpose. Actually, this goes for everything in this entire application. It must serve a purpose. If it's fluff, it shouldn't be there, okay? It really should not be there. You're not trying to eat up or use up space by any means. So usually like a 3,000 characters is approximately a page. I mean, it depends on the page formatting and stuff like that, but yeah, that's usually the case. Personal statement is something that you want it to be a page or a little over. Like if you're gonna use up the 5,200 character limit, you better make sure that it really has no fluff and it's actually keeping the reader's attention, because it's really bad when it's long for the sake of being long and it totally loses the reader's attention. It's not doing its job, right? The job of the personal statement is not to fill in space or to reiterate your CV and talk about, I grew up in this kind of neighborhood and I was really good at art when I was young and I was good at school, so I went to dental school. And then I decided to come to the US so that I could advance my career in the place where, I don't know, the dental textbooks I studied came from here. That is not what you want your CV, personal statement to be about. That is so generic, so boring. It needs to be so about you. Anyway, so when in doubt, cut out the fluff, make sure you have a good storyline. And remember, once it's done, it's done. You can't do it. This personal statement is actually something that if you are planning on applying next year for the first time, let's say, I get started with that right now. And this is not too early to start with at all. I'd start with it right now because you want this to be done and submittable when the CAPID opens. Like the personal statement takes time. It's refinement, and it's the process of, yeah, it's continual refinement over and over and over again. So get started with it soon, like now. Okay, so that's the personal statement, and I think that concludes section 3. And then section 4 is program materials, and my typo here. And it gave me a red squiggly line. So obviously I didn't see this before. You always have to be looking over your own stuff. Okay, program materials it depends completely on the school you're applying to. Okay, so there's no rule here at all. Some schools ask for a supplemental essay questionnaire. Some schools are not even essay questionnaires, but they just want you to answer some other questions about you, your background, your education, whatnot. Some allow you to upload paper recommendation letters. If you have them, you can like scan it and upload it. And some don't ask for anything. Those are the easiest schools to apply to. But whatever schools you apply to, please, if it has a supplemental essay area or whatever, like the supplemental area that they're asking you for, take each one very seriously. Like if you have a fantastically beautiful SOP and a poorly written essay questionnaire, that just shows them that you are not very serious about applying to that school actually, and you just did it. I don't know, you know what I mean? And you absolutely do not want that to any capacity. Okay, now that we went through all of the sections and stuff like that, let's think about what are the areas that you actually have the most control over, like here and now. There are 4 areas. 2 under academic history and 2 under supporting information. It's continuing education courses, advanced dental education programs, experiences, and achievements. Oh my gosh, we're like 10 minutes before already. I'll be able to answer many questions at all today, but let me go through this as quickly as I can. So first, let's look at continuing education courses. I already mentioned, right? It's so funny that they specify no more than 10 in the past 5 years. But while you do attend them, and yeah, go do them, attend the ones that make sense for your overall application. Don't do this. This is all over the place. Don't go to one ortho course and then an implant course, then a veneer course, and a child behavior management course. what is your goal? What does your past experiences say about you, and how are you presenting yourself to be to the school? You want your continuing education courses to kind of support that and paint a better picture about who you are. If you do all these random courses, it's like, this applicant has a lot of interesting interests and they're not clear about what they want in their future. Everybody knows that future goals change and stuff like that, but the ability to be able to talk about a future goal and dream is important. You want that to be clear, and that should be written in your SOP. So yeah, be wary of that, and do things that actually will help you and not kind of paint a randomized picture of who you are. You want a very succinct application for yourself. Advanced dental education programs, this arguably you may or may not be able to do. If you can do it, it's great. Do remember that they're not all created equal. I mean, an internship program that lasted a few months and a residency program is not going to carry the same weight, but it's cool if you can put in something there. Again, a lot of applicants are not able to. They haven't done anything, and I was one of those people, and that's okay. But yeah, that is something that if you're very early on in the game, you might want to think about it and actually take it that way, especially if your candidacy is a little weaker. Something you can do. And then comes experiences. This was under section 3. Experiences. Dental experience, employment, non-dental healthcare, research, teaching, extracurricular activities, and volunteer activities. I think it's very interesting to look at these categories, and some are going to be like applicable to two things. Maybe the extracurricular activity you did while you're in school was kind of like a volunteer thing where you went in, you know, to do something. And maybe you had a teaching position that was also an employment, you know. If that is the case, you want to list out everything you have along with which category it can belong to. If it makes much more stronger sense for it to belong under one category than another, I would absolutely put it there. Weight, in terms of weight, I would definitely put weight onto dental experience, employment. Those two, I would definitely put weight there. Dental experience because we're applying for dental school. Employment because it shows real responsibility, like you were paid officially to do something, right? Like you actually had some real something going on. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll come to your volunteer thing tomorrow and then that's it, you know? Like you actually had skin in the game if you have employment. So these are the two things that I would absolutely prioritize and try to make sure. I mean, employment, not everybody can have it after they move to the US, right? Like if you're not like don't have a work permit, whatnot, you can't do it. If you're still in your home country, you can do it. Yeah, so those two. But yeah, just like lay out all of the things, put it, like use big sticky note or whatever, and write out the experiences that you had along with the categories that are possible. And then like kind of look at them and see like, okay, if something makes sense equally to put under extracurricular and volunteer, what do other ones look like? And can I try and kind of Tetris things in so that I have some extracurricular and some volunteer stuff? Stuff like that is what you want to do with it. But yeah, but again, for the average or for the most typical candidates, you want to be balanced in terms of the experience because they're looking for well-rounded applicants. I know most people hate that word because it's like, what the hell does that even mean? Well, here, this is what that means, right? It's well-balanced, it's very well-rounded. Achievements is something that you can control potentially at this point. Not a ton anymore because most of them were things that you could do while you belong to school or when you were in your residency program, whatever. But presentations, publications, these things are, I see plenty of people giving presentations still, and you can do this. So think about this. And also, just somebody that we worked with recently or still working with got like a couple of awards from the volunteer facility that she volunteers for. She's been doing that for a long time, and she got a couple of awards from there. That is fantastic. So, you know, like there are places you can get recognized for and get awards at. So you want to start strategizing by thinking about this. What kind of applicant are you presenting yourself to be? This is an important question to ask yourself. If you feel like you have nothing going for you, you better at least come up with a theme. And then you can figure out, okay, like what do I need to add to it, things like that. What would the school think when they receive your application? And they're not just receiving yours, they're receiving hundreds of other applications. What are they going to think about when they like look through your thing? Does it make sense? Do they want this person? Maybe that's like a difficult question to ask, but does your application at least make sense? This person's past experiences and where they say they want to go, is it like streamlined, or did they again had like a bunch of ortho CE courses and they're like, I want to be an oral surgeon after I'm done? And it's like, excuse me? Like, tie this together for me, please, because you want to do the work for them. You really don't want to make them do thinking, because they won't do it, okay? And then with that, you want to think about what kind of experiences to go after, to add to your list of things. Okay, so let's go to questions. I did want to mention that if you enjoyed today's workshop, I'm so glad you did. We have a ton of workshops that we've done, things in regards to personal statement, who to get recommendation letters from, how to format your CV and things like that, all the way to how to interview, USC's PBL interview. I don't know if you're going to USC, that's coming up soon. Also about bench tests, common mistakes people make, how to prepare for your bench test if you only have 3 weeks, things like that. And you can get all access to all of our past and upcoming workshops and our member area as well, actually. So go here, http://internationaldentistcentral.com/workshops, and that will be there. Now let me stop sharing my screen and take a look at the chat room. And I was overly ambitious when I wanted to do this entire presentation today. Obviously, I ran tight on time, but let's see. CDA exam is not a standardized test. Standardized test, literally, you have to choose whether it's MBD Part 1, MBD Part 2, or TOEFL. And again, you guys, go make an account with CAPID. Log in and see what you're dealing with. All of the things that I listed out, they are from there. I didn't like grab it out of thin air. Like, log in there and like see what you're dealing with. Some I'm sorry, I'm like trying to talk and read comments at the same time, and I'm not very good at that. Embarrassingly bad at multitasking. Anyway, yeah, go there and like see what you're dealing with. You have to choose. And Karthika, thank you. Employment is under experiences section. Like, you have to, when you enter an experience, it's kind of like says, click here to add a new experience. And then on the very top, it's like a drop-down menu. You have to choose, is this experience employment, unrelated, extracurricular activity, like that list I gave you before, that is right there. CPR, infection control, certificates or continuing education. It could potentially go under both, because you probably did it as a continuing education and then you got a certificate out of it, right? If you have too much like under continuing education, I may think about taking them out as well, because they are going to be listed under certificates. So like, really, in terms of like, where does this go and like, what should I do? It is a very, very personalized thing. More than like, I know you guys don't like this because you guys probably want like, this is how you do this and go do A, B, and C and you're done. It's not like this. And it really is not like this at all. You need somebody, you probably should have somebody vested and that like is working with you on your application. It is extremely complicated. Because honestly, it was easier before it became CAPID because I could format the CV however I wanted, right? And I can just send it in. And it was totally up to me what I would do. It was totally up to me what I would list first. It was up to me. I would use, do you want to bold something? Use italics. I mean, you wanted to look professional, but that I had all of the control over how things were going to get presented. And now we don't have that anymore. So that's important to note. Okay. Yes, Geeth, you absolutely want to add dental licenses from your home country. Absolutely. And that's why that dental license field is there, because, you know, if you had a US dental license, you probably wouldn't be applying. Okie doke. Is being an RDA count is a good thing? I mean, it's fine to have. It's good, especially if it led to a employment. I think that is good. Registered dental assistant in and of itself, how much weight does it carry? Well, it's going to be better than just observing, shadowing, for sure. Like, is it like a gigantic thing that will really tip your application? Arguable. Okay. All right, you guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And Pachi says, I'm totally guilty of being idle for nearly 5 years in the past after graduation and practice. What do you suggest for me? This will also depend. Like, I do not know what you did after graduation and what kind of practice you had. 5 years idle does not look good. And one thing that you first have to make peace with the fact that it's like, no matter what you do from here on out, those 5 years are not going to get changed, right? Like, you cannot go and retroactively do a residency to cover for those 5 years. So you need to, though, get back into things now. Just do what other people are doing. Start observing, go to CE courses. I mean, I don't know your GPA, anything like that, but you may consider going and doing a master's program just to, just so that you show them that you still are capable of being in academics, because this is a very rigorous program that people are selecting students for. And if people doubt that the applicant can be a good student, they're probably going to be ruled out. So that's another thing that you can think about. And is MPH viewed as research? MPH is the master's program. I mean, you may have done research projects within that, but that in and of itself should not be listed under research. That's like education. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for coming. Again, you can get the workshop All Access Pass by going to internationaldentistcentral.com, just a little / and workshops, all one word. And we will meet back with another public workshop in 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to have a closed member meeting. It's a mock USC PBL session meeting. So if you are going to USC, I would actually really recommend that you join the workshop All Access Pass, just so that you can get into that session. Like, you don't want to be doing something for the first time on your interview day. That's usually not a very good idea. All right, have a fantastic rest of the day, and thank you so much for coming. Bye.